So there is, we had a story earlier, J-Mac had this, where the Cowboys are going to prioritize the position
Mhm.
over the talent, Dak over CD and Micah. Now, it is a wide receiver league. College provides about 15 guys who can play immediately year one and be productive. So I can see slowing down a little on CD Lamb. But edge rushers, there are not a lot of great
Mhm.
ones, and Micah's there. I think I would prioritize a Micah or a CD over Dak because I think, A, they're your picks, they're first-round picks, and they've exceeded expectations. And so I think the message you send to your locker room is, we draft you early and you hit. We're going to take care of you. My question
Yeah.
to you is, if you paid Dak 60, can you also pay CD and Micah, or are you insanely top-heavy on the roster?
Yeah, and that's a fair question. I think like one thing that's interesting is the Justin Jefferson thing hit them at both with both barrels, right? Like so Justin Jefferson obviously raises the bar for receivers and CD had 1700 yards last year, so he's going to ask for something not far off from what Jefferson got. And it also raises the bar for non-quarterbacks, which Mike is going to ask to be the highest paid non-quarterback. And so you go from Nick Bosa at 34 down to Jefferson at 35. And I think the Micah thing is in particular interesting, okay? Because you think about the message that it's going to send to the locker room, what they do with Micah Parsons here. They made Zach Martin wait. They made Demarcus Lawrence wait. They made Dak Prescott wait the last time. So the guys in that locker room can look at ownership right now and said, you made all of these guys wait until after 4 years or until after their contracts were up to take care of them. What does that mean to me? And that's why the Micah thing's so interesting because he's only been in the league 3 years. CD, they've made weight, right? So how do you handle the Micah Parsons thing versus how you've handled Lamb now, Prescott before, Lawrence before, Zach Martin before, even like a Des Bryant, if you want to go further back? It's just really interesting because the Cowboys have been burned so many times by waiting on these things. And now they've got a guy who wants to get paid early. How do they handle that? How does that resonate in the locker room? That part's interesting. And then the Dak thing, of course, you have to be concerned with after what Trevor Lawrence got, what damage waiting could do, from here on out. If you're waiting and Jordan Love and Tua get paid, does that raise the stakes on what you got to pay Dak? It certainly could. And the franchise tag after the year, and I'm sure you know this, Colin, would cost them over $80 million. So
Yeah.
that's not going to happen either.
I want to circle back to the Jets.
Okay, we're going to talk about the Cowboys, not the Jets. Okay, this is going to maybe surprise a lot of people, especially considering what I have been saying. But I've been thinking about this more and more, and of course, with new information coming out with kind of a lot of the trouble that the Dallas Cowboys have been facing with, Micah kind of having these issues, and it's actually really been more Micah than anything, and just some of the locker room presence in general. But I don't love the idea of overpaying Dak Prescott. I don't love the idea. I know there's a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans that are all for and say he's amazing, he's great, he's a top quarterback, blah 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 blah. Put that aside though, because this is not going to be me hating on Dak Prescott at all. This is going to be actually praising Dak. To me, what's very clear with the Dallas Cowboys is that Dak is the grown-up in the room. There's no leaks from Dak's camp, whether it be, any weird sound bites from him personally, from his camp, from, because we've heard Mike McCarthy is fed up with Jerry Jones. Micah Parsons hasn't even talked to the new DC, right? And the one interview, I forget the guy's name right now, kind of saying Micah hasn't deserved his payday yet. Like, it's just all this weird, bizarre stuff. And when I look at it, you need clarity at the quarterback position, especially when you don't have an A-plus coach, A-plus GM, which, is one and the same for the Cowboys at least, an A-plus coach, and then you need an A, and I don't mean to say A-plus, just great, whatever, and quarterback. And when those things are kind of messy, the best things you have going for you is having a really, really good to great quarterback who's also very humble, says the right things, is a team player and like a franchise player. And when I say franchise player, I don't mean franchise as in like he deserves all the money and the fame. I mean like he represents the franchise exactly how you want. If you own the Dallas Cowboys and you have to pick, in terms of just representing your franchise, your team, Dak Prescott is in the top list. Whether you want to say he's one of the best quarterbacks is irrelevant. I just mean like what he represents and how he represents the Dallas Cowboys. It's always in a positive light. And that matters. It really, really does. And I think when you're also trying to get a new coach, because if you think Mike McCarthy's not good enough and you want to get a new coach, Dak is a good enough quarterback that I think a lot of coaches, and this is a made-up scenario, obviously, but let's say Andy Reid was available, Shanahan was available, McVay was available, right? All these great top coaches that we know are as good as it gets, they're not going to get there and say, Dak's trash. I don't want to deal with Dak. Are you kidding me? They're not going to be in that situation. At the very least, they're going to give it a year or two to see, like, okay, let's see what I can do with this guy. And they will most definitely improve him and make him better. That's what those coaches do. So we know that if you get a great offensive coach with Dak, Dak is going to play better. The problem with Dak is since he commands so much money. That has always been the problem. And then that does now put you in a tough situation to be able to draft a good, or to be able to build a good team. You have to do it all in the draft and hope for the best. And so even though Micah is probably technically better, and CeeDee Lamb maybe even for that matter, they're both better at their individual, positions than Dak is at his position. I actually lean more towards actually paying Dak. And I think it all depends on what you want to do, either as a Dallas Cowboys fan or if you're Jerry Jones and own the team. Like, what is your hopes? Because I don't see the Dallas Cowboys winning a Super Bowl within the next couple of years. That's me personally. I do not see it happening. I don't think the team as constructed is good enough. I don't think some of the pieces, even though they have some amazing pieces, they're not good enough to overcome some of the deficits that they have. I don't think Mike McCarthy is this amazing coach. I really don't think he's a good coach. I don't think he's this elite coach. I understand all the wins and all that, but I don't believe in it. So I think firing him is the right move. I would have fired him this season and got that ball rolling. I would have tried to get Harbaugh. I would have tried to get Ben Johnson, Slowick. I mean, there's just other people that you could have tried to make a play for, and they did not, And then that gives you now another year with Dak, and you now let that coach, right? If Harbaugh says, I can't win with Dak, then you trust it. You say, okay, you're the offensive genius, go, right? Like if Ben Johnson says, I can't make Dak work, it's like, all right, I'm paying for your expertise. If that's what you say, let's go. Fine, we move on from him. But if those coaches say, Dak is great, I can absolutely win with him, we just need to do this and that and this and that, it's like, all right, great, then you trust it. But that's the problem with McCarthy when you have him being like a lame duck coach. You're just like, what do I do with this? Do I trust McCarthy to make the appropriate decision? Do I trust his ability to evaluate a quarterback? Is he to blame why they're losing? Is it Dak? What is it? Is it defense, offense? It just makes it harder. So if you're a fan and you're watching the Dallas Cowboys and you're thinking to yourselves, well, what do I want out of this team? Do I want to be relevant? Do I want to be a clown? Do I mind if we're a clown show and things get real bad, but then we get to draft real high over the next couple of years, like a rebuild, a soft rebuild, not a tank, but like you're just not going to be really fighting for the division. You have to figure out what you want, because if you get rid of Dak and you pay these other players, you're not going to be a good team. You're just not. And you need to have a great coach to be able to draft a young quarterback or get a less than great quarterback, whether it be like a Baker, and these are made up scenarios as well, a Tua, a Baker, whatever it may be, you're not going to win. You're not going to just be able to plug and play. Again, what makes Brock Purdy so successful with the 49ers is not only an elite roster, but an elite coach. That's how those things work. You can't just do it with any old coach. So I just think that if you move on from Dak, you have to be very confident what quarterback you're going to want to go after, or you have to be prepared to say, all right, we're going to be on a quarterback journey for the next few years. That's just the way it goes. And you're going to really hope that you have the right coach in place who can develop these quarterbacks, or you can trust their evaluation of quarterbacks at the very least. That's to me where you have to go. And if you're not willing to do all that, and you're not willing to not be a good team for the next few years, then get Dak. He is the the leadership. He is the calming factor within that organization and the stabilizing factor in that organization. That then I'm more willing to move on from a Micah or a Ceedee. Not saying that I want to, or you're right. I don't think you have to move on from both of them. You'd have to probably pick if you pay Dak all that money. Because at least I know, like, Micah has not given me any reassurance of him being a leader and a player that I can trust moving forward. He is very much just me. And again, I get it. At the end of the day, this is just a job for these guys. They do need to get their money. They do need to take care of themselves. It's a business. I get it, but it's a balance. You can do both. We've seen players consistently do both. And it's just, the amount that he talks and the trouble that he brings, it's unsettling. It's really unsettling, especially if you're saying, I'm going to have to move on for my quarterback and get a new quarterback and now deal with that drama, because it's not going to be very easy. What do you think? You're just going to be able to draft the next CJ Stroud and have instant success? The chances of that are very, very low. And then when the team's not as great and they're not legitimately fighting for an NFC championship game, what does Micah start saying? What type of more noise comes out of his mouth? And then things start to spiral. He becomes more toxic within the locker room. He brings people down. He undercuts the coach. It just becomes a disaster. If you pay Dak, you don't have any of that. You don't have any of that. You may not be as good and win, and you maybe not be able to build a roster that's as competitive as you would like to. But it's just like, at least you have a franchise that you can at least be more proud of, and you're not like, oh great, what's the problem now? So I think you kind of have to pick and choose. Do you kind of want to be a little irrelevant for a little bit? And if you are, you're going to be loud and noisy and messy because you're going to have Micah continue to talk nonsense? Or do you want to pay Dak? You're going to have to make your team slightly worse, really rely on some of these younger players, and you have more stability. And maybe that stability, you're in a better position to actually now get further in the playoffs. I don't know, especially if you get a good coach, then that can happen a lot quicker, right? And then that process you'll be able to build a better team more quickly. So I think they're in an interesting situation. But for me, before, I kept saying, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you got to move on from Dak. And based off of what the Cowboys situation is right now and all the noise and all the chaos, I personally, at this point, I would say, you know what? I'd rather have Dak as my quarterback right now, because at least I trust him. At least I get the feeling that he actually cares and wants to win for the Dallas Cowboys. And I just can't say that about many of the other players, especially the players that are supposed to be leaders for the Dallas Cowboys. So I'd be more willing to move on from them. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think that Dak should be prioritized over, say, CeeDee Lamb and Micah? Or do you think it should be the other way around? Or how do you think this should all unfold? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. And I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.